Christmas Day 1993, my parents blessed us with a Model 2 Sega Genesis, with Sonic 2 as the pack-in title, and our very own copy of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Hyperstone Heist. Previously, I had no idea what a Sega Genesis was. I vaguely remember seeing the Genesis Does commercials on TV, but only knew Nintendo to this point. All I knew was my brother was super excited to get a Sega Genesis, so I shared in his excitement, having no idea what a Sega Genesis even was. Previously, we had the same Nintendo my family received on Christmas 88 or 89, and knowledge of new gaming consoles wasn't a thing that really existed in my world. Nintendo was a thing, but so were cartoons and playing toys, and all the other fun things that went along with being a kid in the late 80s and early 90s. One of the favorite games for my brother and I to play on the NES was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Manhattan Project. We would end up spending hundreds of hours in total playing through Manhattan Project, and looking back, it is still probably my favorite Ninja Turtles game of all time. The very first Sega Genesis game we booted up was Hyperstone Heist, putting Sonic 2 on the back burner. Upon finally seeing Hyperstone Heist that Christmas morning, for the first time in my life, I noticed graphics. Playing through NES games, I never took the time to notice if one game looked better or ran better than another. Being uninformed at the time, games were just games. Some were more fun than others, but as far as visuals go, it was never a priority in my mind. However, when I first booted up Hyperstone in all its RF switch glory on the tiny TV we had in our room, I marveled and remember saying, "Wow, now games look like cartoons." I was blown away and convinced that graphics cannot look any better than what was before my eyes. Everything about the game's visuals and smooth and addictive gameplay blew me away. It seems pretty simplistic by today's standards in all their 4K high-def glory. But those of we who have been there to see giant leaps in graphics have many console generations of memories, having to adjust our eyes to the beauty of next-generation gaming sitting right before us. As far as my gaming life is concerned, booting up Hyperstone Heist is one of those magical moments I will never forget. Those in my generation were lucky enough to have many similar moments in our gaming lives. Whether it be that jump from 8-bit gaming to 16-bit gaming, the jump from 16-bit to 32 or 64-bit gaming, or the jump from the PS2 to PS3, or the Dreamcast, or even when the Voodoo graphics card became a thing in PC gaming. My generation has been spoiled, and for me, it started in my 9-year-old eyes looking at the graphics of the Sega Genesis, and the excitement of owning a new system. Definitely a defining gaming moment for me. From a gameplay and design standpoint, Hyperstone Heist borrows its gameplay mechanics and some of its level designs from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4, Turtles in Time on the Super Nintendo. Having not played Turtles in Time prior to this, I had no idea. So to me, this was a fresh jump from Manhattan Project to Hyperstone. Each turtle has their own set of combos, an automatic back attack for enemies behind them, their own special attacks which drain your life bar, new aerial moves that depend on hitting the button at the right time in order to do them correctly, the ability to slam opponents for an instant one-hit death, and my personal favorite, the ability to run with a variety of running attack maneuvers to pull off as well. Hyperstone has a couple of the same levels as Turtles in Time. However, Hyperstone plays a lot more like a modded version of Turtles in Time overall. A few similar levels, but used in new ways, and is a completely different game altogether, even if there are similarities between the two. As with other Konami games on the Genesis, Hyperstone was a Genesis exclusive version of a Konami franchise. Most gamers are aware of this, but Konami was in the business of releasing exclusive versions of their franchises for the Genesis, even when the games were identically named with their Super Nintendo counterparts, like Sunset Riders for example. While Castlevania Bloodlines and Contra Hardcore were completely new games in their franchises, Hyperstone Heist is a bit of a middle ground, where it's similar to the Super Nintendo version of Turtles 4, but still different enough to stand as its own game. And in my unpopular opinion, taking my bias that this is the one I have owned for 24 years as of making this video, is actually better than Turtles in Time in its own way. Inevitably, I can't talk about Hyperstone without mentioning Turtles in Time. The two games are almost intertwined, so I'll cover a few things I see rightfully noted in comparison videos, and give you my reasoning as to why I like Hyperstone just a little bit better, despite considering both to be two of the best beat-em-ups of all time. In comparisons, people rightfully mention the obvious big difference between the two, that being the Mode 7 scrolling effects absent from Hyperstone, as the Genesis wasn't capable or very capable of doing them, as the Super Nintendo was. Hyperstone lacks the cool effect of throwing your enemies at the screen that Turtles 4 has. I also think Turtles in Time has a better selection of boss characters over Hyperstone, and more of them, including some dual boss fights. Turtles in Time is also a little longer in length than Hyperstone, however, after years of playing Manhattan Project, both are super short. It also offers a versus mode and a time attack mode, but who cares about those? I don't. Imagine my surprise that Christmas Day sitting down and beating the game with my brother in one sitting. It did not take long until we were singing along with Pizza Power in the end credits. However, as with both Turtles in Time and Hyperstone, that never stopped us from playing them again and again. On the music end, Time versus Hyperstone, I actually prefer Hyperstone. But that's because that's the one I've owned longer, but the differences are close enough that I leave that one up to your personal preference as to which of the two sounds better. Graphical effects and slight length differences aside, Hyperstone still edges out the venerable Turtles in Time when it comes to the core gameplay. I can't speak for the PAL versions of either game, nor for those of you who play them on emulators, as I've never used emulation outside of official compilation packs, that is. However, Hyperstone runs smoother and moves faster than Turtles in Time, which feels a little sluggish by comparison. Hyperstone also assigns the run maneuver to the C button, meaning the player can run at will and can smoothly pull off the run maneuvers without any delay. This makes the run moves an integral part of the gameplay in Hyperstone. In order to pull off a run maneuver in Turtles in Time, you are left with two imperfect options. The first option being the auto run option, which in holding the D-pad in one direction for a certain amount of time causes your turtle to automatically sprint. As you might expect, this causes a delay before allowing players to use a run maneuver, and makes running seem almost random at times, and it doesn't allow for these maneuvers to be a reliable part of your strategy in the game. The second imperfect option in the game is to turn on manual running, which requires the player to double tap the desired direction on the D-pad. This also causes a delayed response, and while more reliable than auto-run, works spottily at best in the game. Just pressing one button to handle all sprinting in the game feels a lot more intuitive. Mix that with the amazing D-pad of the Genesis 6-button controller, the only controller I've used for my Genesis for 23 to 24 years now, and Hyperstone runs smoother and controls a lot better. If you happen to own both the original games for the original systems, feel free to play both and disagree with me if you choose to do so, as I am not so dogmatic about my opinion to think that my opinion is fact. Quite frankly, if you still love Turtles in Time a lot better than Hyperstone, that's fine with me, actually. I just prefer Hyperstone. Yes, partially possibly because of my bias in this being my first experience with either game and gameplay style, but hey, if you disagree, that's fine with me. I don't really care, it's cool. The bottom line. Forgive me if this video morphed into less of a review and more of a comparison of Hyperstone versus Turtles in Time. But while both are definitely worth picking up, Hyperstone will always be the better of the two in my humble opinion, due to its smoother gameplay and better control mechanics. Checking on Amazon and eBay, Hyperstone will cost you a little bit more than Turtles in Time will, seeing as it was a Genesis release and more overlooked. However, Manhattan Project is cheaper than both of them for you Nintendo fans out there. You actually can't go wrong with any of those three.